Welcome to Swan Haven, a place for swans to feed and rest. Thank you for joining this self-guided audio tour. I'm Karen McCall, a wildlife viewing specialist with the Yukon Department of Environment's Wildlife Viewing Program. I'll be your guide on today's walk. I'll also introduce a couple of local bird experts along the way. In a few moments, I'll tell you why Swan Haven is a 5-star stopping place for migrating swans. First, though, some logistics. On this tour, we'll be walking to a viewpoint along the shore of McClintock Bay. The distance is about 600 meters one way, and it will take about 25 minutes. If you want to use the outhouse before we start, those are located outside the Interpretive Centre. Feel free to pause the tour until you're ready. The tour ends at the viewpoint with the Adirondack chairs. You're welcome to spend as much time there as you want and return at your leisure. The shoreline trail is flat but unmaintained. Depending on conditions, you might be walking on ice, snow, or sand. Watch your step, the route can be slippery. And finally, if you have a dog, please keep it leashed and pick up any waste. To access each of the audio segments, simply use the QR code on each of the panels along the way or scroll down manually in the web browser. If you have headphones, please wear them to not disturb others. I'll ask you to take your headphones off between stops so you can enjoy the natural ambiance and be alert to your surroundings. Our first stop is here on the bank of Marsh Lake. Normally, we have a viewing deck here, but the shoreline was fortified against erosion in 2024, and the site is still under construction. Take a moment to look out over the lake. We are in the traditional territory of the Kwalndun First Nation and Carcross-Tagish First Nation. The Marsh Lake area is rich in wildlife and is particularly important for caribou and migrating birds. So it's not surprising that Indigenous people have a long history of use here, as well as continued cultural connections. For these reasons, McClintock Bay, in front of you, is identified as a habitat protection area under the Kwalndun and Carcross-Tagish First Nation final agreements. McClintock Bay might look idyllic now, but in the 1980s, before these agreements, it was less so. Concerns were growing about people disturbing swans by getting too close in their boats or on foot. Something needed to be done. Rather than focusing on rules and enforcement, conservationists came up with a better idea. Why not take advantage of this spectacular setting to teach people about swans and the significance of the area? The Swan Haven Interpretive Centre is the result of that vision. It opened in 1994 in partnership with the Government of Yukon, Ducks Unlimited, and Girl Guides of Canada. Now, Swan Haven is a peaceful place that draws thousands of water birds each spring. Witnessing this migration is quite remarkable. You could go so far as to call it a global phenomenon, according to Margaret Campbell, a wildlife biologist with the Canadian Wildlife Service in Whitehorse.
One of the things that's probably the most special about seeing the swans at Swan Haven is that when they're all here, there's thousands of them at once, which is a very rare thing to see at a short period of time.
Swan Haven also holds a special place in the heart of Jim Hawkins, a retired wildlife biologist and lifelong birder.
We've got the mountains in the background and the ice and the lakes. It's just a very magical place that people can't really help but be impressed with, I think.
You'll hear more from Margaret and Jim on this walk. You can now proceed down the stairs. Go right at the bottom and continue along the packed trail to the first interpretive sign. You can take your headphones off until you reach the sign. Remember to use the QR code on the next panel.